Sharon Osbourne has finally broken her silence, and what she just revealed about Ozzy's death is leaving fans stunned. After decades together, through fame, chaos, and love, Sharon has come forward with something no one saw coming. Join us as we uncover the truth behind Sharon Osbourne's shocking revelation about Ozzy's death. Broke, lost, and rebellious. John Michael Osbourne, known to the world as Ozzy Osbourne, was born on December 3, 1948, in Aston, a rough and heavily industrial part of Birmingham, England. This was just a few years after World War II ended, and like many families in Britain at the time, the Osbournes were struggling to get by. Ozzy grew up in a small, overcrowded home with 5 siblings. His father, Jack Osbourne, worked night shifts at a car factory to provide for the family, while his mother, Lillian, worked during the day at another local factory. There wasn't much money, and there was even less space. Life in the Osbourne household was noisy, busy, and often tough. From an early age, Ozzy found life difficult. He didn't fit in well at school and had a very hard time learning. What no one knew at the time was that Ozzy had dyslexia. But back then, conditions like dyslexia were not well understood. Instead of being given help, Ozzy was often punished. Teachers labeled him a troublemaker, and classmates teased him for being different. By age 15, he decided to drop out. He left school with no qualifications, no plan, and little hope for the future. With few job options and no skills, Ozzy began drifting toward trouble. He started hanging out with the wrong crowd and became involved in petty crime. He stole clothes, broke into shops, and even tried to steal a television once. His behavior led to several arrests. One day, he was caught breaking into a clothing store and was sent to prison for a short time. For someone so young, it was a frightening experience. His father eventually paid a fine to get him out, but the impact of that moment stayed with him. Ozzy later said that being locked up was a wake-up call. He realized that continuing down that road would only lead to a wasted life. Although he didn't turn things around right away, that time in jail marked the beginning of a change in mindset. He didn't want to end up like the people he saw behind bars. He knew he had to find another way to live, even if he didn't yet know what that would look like. Soon he would find his way into music, and everything would begin to change. Next, you'll see how Ozzy went from a lost teenager to the unexpected frontman of a band that would shake the music world. How darkness was born. In 1968, Ozzy Osbourne's life began to take a new path. After years of struggling to find direction, he joined up with 3 other musicians from Birmingham: guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward. They were all young men looking to make something out of their love for music. Each one brought their own style and personality, and together they had the raw talent needed to create something original. At first, the band was called Earth. They played blues-inspired rock and performed around local clubs and pubs. But soon, they realized the name was already being used by another band. Around the same time, Geezer Butler had written a song inspired by horror movies and the dark themes that fascinated the group. One day, they noticed that people loved being scared by horror films, and they wondered, why not make music that gives people that same feeling? So, they changed the band's name to Black Sabbath, after a 1963 horror movie starring Boris Karloff. It was a perfect match for the heavy, eerie sound they were beginning to shape. In 1970, they released their first album, simply titled Black Sabbath. It didn't sound like anything else people had heard before. That same year, they released their second album, Paranoid, which shot them into worldwide fame. With success came a busy and stressful lifestyle. Black Sabbath was touring all the time, going from city to city, country to country. The pressure to perform and stay at the top took a toll on the band. For Ozzy, the stress and the sudden fame led to heavy drinking and drug use. At first, it was just part of the party lifestyle that came with being a rock star. But soon, it became a serious problem. Up next, we'll look at how things began to fall apart and how Ozzy was forced to start over. Collapse and reinvention. As the 1970s came to an end, things started falling apart for Ozzy Osbourne. While Black Sabbath had become one of the biggest rock bands in the world, life behind the scenes was getting harder. The non-stop touring, pressure to keep making music, and sudden fame had pushed Ozzy deeper into drug and alcohol abuse. What started as partying turned into a serious addiction. He was drinking heavily every day and using drugs like cocaine and pills just to get through. The rest of the band noticed the changes. Ozzy was becoming more unreliable. He would miss rehearsals and sometimes show up to shows in no condition to perform. Arguments became more common, and tension grew between Ozzy and the other members of Black Sabbath. They had all struggled with substance use at different points, but Ozzy's behavior had become too unpredictable. His voice was still powerful, but his ability to stay focused was slipping away. In 1979, the band made a difficult decision. They fired Ozzy. It wasn't easy. He had been the voice and the face of Black Sabbath for over a decade, but they felt they could no longer work with him. His addictions had taken control, and they were worried that continuing with him would destroy the band completely. For Ozzy, it was a crushing blow. He was heartbroken and angry. After being kicked out of the band he helped build, he fell into a deep depression. He locked himself in a hotel room and went on a long binge, drinking and doing drugs for days. He thought his career was over. He didn't know what to do next. At that point, he didn't even know if he wanted to go on living. But then came Sharon Osbourne. Sharon was the daughter of Don Arden, who had managed Black Sabbath in their early days. She had known Ozzy for years, and when she saw how far he had fallen, she stepped in. She became his manager and refused to let him give up. Sharon believed that Ozzy still had talent and that he could have a solo career. More than that, she cared about him and wanted to help him get better. With Sharon guiding him, Ozzy began to rebuild. They put together a new band and started working on his first solo album. One of the most important pieces of the puzzle was guitarist Randy Rhoads. Randy was young, incredibly talented, and had a background in classical music. His playing style was fast, sharp, and full of energy. Together, Ozzy and Randy created a sound that was fresh and exciting. In 1980, Blizzard of Oz was released. It was a huge success. His voice sounded strong, and the music had new life. A year later, they followed up with Diary of a Madman, which also did well. Ozzy was on top again, but just as things were going right, tragedy struck. In 1982, during a tour, Randy Rhoads was killed in a plane crash. He was only 25 years old. The loss hit Ozzy hard. Randy wasn't just a bandmate, he was a friend and someone who had helped save Ozzy's career. Ozzy was devastated and struggled to cope. For a while, he considered quitting music altogether. Next, we'll dive into Ozzy's messy personal life and the family chaos that came with fame. Turbulence and family. Ozzy Osbourne's personal life has been as intense and unpredictable as his music career. Behind the scenes, his relationships were often messy, emotional, and full of conflict. From his troubled first marriage to the roller coaster journey with Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's home life has always been deeply tied to his struggles with addiction, fame, and mental health. In the early 1970s, at the height of Black Sabbath's rise, Ozzy met a woman named Thelma Riley at a nightclub in Birmingham. They quickly became a couple and got married in 1971. Thelma was a school teacher and, at the time, probably seemed like a steady influence in Ozzy's chaotic world. Together, they had 2 children, Jessica and Louis. Ozzy also adopted Elliot, Thelma's son from a previous relationship. On the outside, it may have looked like he had started a family and settled down, but the reality was far different. Ozzy has admitted many times that he was not a good husband or father during those years. He was constantly on the road with Black Sabbath, caught up in the band's demanding schedule. When he was home, his drinking and drug use made things even harder. He was distant, emotionally unavailable, and often too intoxicated to be present with his children. After years of emotional distance and rising tension, the marriage ended in divorce in 1982. That same year, Ozzy's life changed in a big way. After being fired from Black Sabbath, He began working closely with Sharon Osbourne. Sharon was the daughter of Don Osbourne, Black Sabbath's former manager, and had known Ozzy from the early days of the band. She became his manager and took control of his solo career. More than that, she became a powerful and steady presence in his life. Their professional relationship quickly turned romantic, and the two were married in 1982. Ozzy and Sharon had 3 children together: Amy, Kelly, and Jack. Sharon played a huge role in Ozzy's life, not just as a wife, but also as the person managing his entire career. She booked his tours, handled business deals, and made sure his music reached the right audience. She also had to deal with the many challenges that came with Ozzy's addictions. Both Ozzy and Sharon have spoken openly about how explosive things could get. They argued often, sometimes in public, and their relationship was anything but quiet. The darkest moment came in 1989. During a drug and alcohol-fueled breakdown, Ozzy attempted to strangle Sharon at home. She managed to escape and called the police. Ozzy was arrested and later charged with attempted murder. He was sent to rehab after the incident, in later interviews, and was horrified by his actions. Sharon, although deeply hurt, chose to forgive him. She believed in his ability to change and recover, and they stayed together despite everything. Both of them later described that period as one of the hardest times in their lives. Despite the violence and pain, the two built a partnership that remained strong for decades. Sharon helped keep Ozzy's career alive during times when he could barely function, and in return, Ozzy often credited her with saving his life. Over time, their children also became part of the public spotlight. In 2002, the Osbourne family was introduced to a whole new audience when the Osbournes' reality TV show premiered on MTV. The show followed the day-to-day life of Ozzy, Sharon, Kelly, and Jack, living together in a chaotic Los Angeles mansion. Their oldest daughter, Amy, chose not to appear on the show and moved out to avoid the cameras. The show was unlike anything else on TV at the time. Viewers saw Ozzy not as the wild rock star who bit the head off a bat, but as a confused, often grumpy father, trying to live a normal life in a house full of barking dogs and loud teenagers. He wandered around the house forgetting where the remote was, struggling with the phone, or yelling at the mess in the living room. Fans were surprised to see this side of him. It was real, funny, and strangely relatable. The Osbournes became a massive hit and ran from 2002 to 2005. But while the cameras caught the funny moments, they couldn't show everything. Some of Ozzy's darkest public controversies were still to come. Infamous legal controversies. In early 1985, a shocking crime in Massachusetts captured national attention. A 19-year-old man named James Jollymore was arrested for the brutal and senseless murder of William Savage, a 20-year-old father. The killing happened in the victim's home and was described by police as unprovoked and violent. What made the case even more disturbing to many people was Jollymore's explanation for his actions. After being arrested, he claimed that he had been influenced by Ozzy Osbourne's music. He said the song affected his mind and pushed him into a dark mental state. Jollymore's defense team took this even further, arguing that the song contained subliminal messages, hidden messages that listeners supposedly absorb without realizing it. They claimed these messages had a powerful psychological effect on their client. The accusation shocked many people. The idea that a song could cause someone to commit murder was frightening. The case added fuel to the growing fear around heavy metal music, which was already under fire from parents, religious leaders, and conservative groups. In the 1980s, many people believed that heavy metal promoted violence, drug use, and even Satanism. This murder case seemed to confirm those fears for some. Although there was no real evidence to support the claim, Ozzy Osbourne was quickly pulled into the media storm. He and his legal team strongly denied the accusations. They explained that his music was not about encouraging violence. It was a warning against alcohol abuse and the dangerous path it can lead to. One of the songs, they said, was inspired by the tragic death of AC/DC's Bon Scott, who died from alcohol poisoning. Eventually, the court dismissed the case. There was no proof that Ozzy's music had directly caused the murder. There was also no evidence that the song contained subliminal messages. Even though Ozzy won in court, the damage to his public image was already done. For many people, especially those unfamiliar with his music, Ozzy was now seen as a dangerous influence on young minds. Even before the Jollymore case, Ozzy had been caught up in another tragic situation. In October 1984, John McCollum, a 19-year-old fan of heavy metal music, was found dead in his bedroom in Indio, California. He had taken his own life with a handgun, and when his parents found him, Ozzy Osbourne's music was reportedly playing on the cassette player beside him. His parents were devastated and confused. They struggled to understand why their son, who had shown signs of emotional struggles, would make such a decision. Not long after his death, they filed a lawsuit against Ozzy Osbourne and his record label, CBS Records. The lawsuit claimed that one of his songs had influenced or encouraged their son to take his life. The legal argument was similar to the one used later in the Jollymore case. The McCollum family's lawyers said that the lyrics of the song were dangerous and irresponsible, especially for young listeners. They also repeated the claim that subliminal messages could have been hidden in the music, pushing vulnerable people toward ending their lives without them even knowing it. Ozzy and his legal team pushed back hard. Once again, they explained the true meaning of the song. Far from promoting violence and death, it was a warning about the dangers of alcohol addiction. The title, they said, referred to alcohol as a deadly solution, not a suggestion to take one's life. They also pointed out that millions of people had heard the song and had not been harmed by it. The court examined the lyrics and arguments carefully. In 1988, the case was officially dismissed. The judge ruled that the lyrics were vague, not a direct cause of the young man's death, and protected under freedom of speech. The court also found no clear evidence of subliminal messaging. While the dismissal was a relief for Ozzy, the public impact was long-lasting. Many people, especially parents and community groups, continued to believe that certain music could have harmful effects on listeners. Even though Ozzy was legally cleared, he remained a controversial figure in the eyes of many. But the spotlight wasn't going anywhere. And as we'll see next, Ozzy's biggest personal battle was far from over. Addicted and out of control. Ozzy Osbourne's career has been filled with highs and lows, but one of the biggest challenges he has faced throughout nearly his entire life has been his addiction to drugs and alcohol. His battles with substance abuse began early in his music career and continued for decades. At times, it nearly killed him. At others, it destroyed relationships and caused long-term damage to his health. Ozzy has always been open about his struggles, often calling himself a medical miracle for surviving what he has put his body through. Ozzy's addiction began in the 1970s, during the early years of Black Sabbath's success. At first, it was part of the lifestyle. Cocaine, alcohol, pills, and other drugs were everywhere in the music industry. Bands were constantly touring, recording, and staying up all night. The pressure to perform, along with sudden fame, made it easy for musicians to fall into bad habits. Ozzy quickly became dependent on multiple substances. Drinking became routine, and cocaine helped him stay awake for long hours. Pills were used to sleep or calm down after shows. It all blended into a daily cycle of addiction. As the years went on, Ozzy's drug use got worse. He started using heroin, a much more dangerous and addictive drug. This brought even more serious problems. He began to miss rehearsals, forget lyrics, and behave unpredictably on stage. Sometimes, he would pass out or become so intoxicated that he couldn't perform. Fans, bandmates, and managers started to worry. His health was clearly in danger. He had multiple overdoses over the years and came close to death more than once. Some of these incidents were private, while others happened during tours or in public. His behavior became harder and harder to manage. People around him, his bandmates, friends, and family, tried to step in. There were many attempts to get him help. Ozzy went to rehab several times, and each time people hoped it would be the last. But most of those attempts didn't last long. He would often relapse, falling back into the same cycle as before. For a long time, nothing seemed to stick. One of the most serious and frightening moments of Ozzy's addiction happened in 1989. During a blackout caused by a mix of drugs and alcohol, Ozzy attempted to kill his wife, Sharon. He later said he had no memory of what happened. Sharon described the terrifying moment when he tried to strangle her in their home. She managed to escape and call the police. Ozzy was arrested and charged with attempted murder. He was sent to rehab following the incident. This event marked what Ozzy later called his rock bottom. It shocked both him and those around him into realizing how out of control he had become. After that, things began to slowly change. Ozzy entered serious rehabilitation and started working harder to get clean. Sharon eventually forgave him, though it was not an easy decision. She later said that she stayed because she believed he could change. From that point on, Ozzy made more honest efforts to stay sober, though it would still take years of ups and downs before he gained more control over his addictions. By the 2000s and beyond, Ozzy began to focus more on his health. He spent less time touring and more time recovering from years of damage. Even so, he remained active in music, continuing to record and release albums when he felt well enough to do so. He often credited his survival to the support of his family and the decision to finally take his recovery seriously. But even with addiction more under control, another major health challenge was just around the corner, one that would change Ozzy's life forever. Ozzy's final struggle. As Ozzy Osbourne grew older, his health began to decline in serious and painful ways. Years of heavy touring, substance abuse, and the natural wear and tear of aging all played a role. But one diagnosis in particular would change everything: Parkinson's disease. Ozzy was first diagnosed with a rare form of Parkinson's known as Parkin2 in 2003. This form of the disease is usually genetic and tends to develop at a younger age than typical Parkinson's. However, Ozzy chose to keep the diagnosis private for many years. He didn't publicly talk about it until 2020, when he shared the news during an interview. By then, many fans had already noticed changes in his movement and speech. His hands would shake at times, and his walking had become slow and unsteady. Even before he spoke publicly about Parkinson's, other health issues were starting to pile up. In 2019, Ozzy had a serious fall at home that caused major damage to his spine. This injury aggravated older problems from a 2003 ATV accident and left him in intense pain. He needed surgery to fix the damage, and the recovery process was long and difficult. Because of the fall and the effects of Parkinson's, Ozzy's mobility became limited, and he often needed help walking or standing. In the following years, Ozzy underwent multiple surgeries, along with physical therapy, to try and improve his condition. The pain and stiffness from Parkinson's made it even harder to recover from injuries. Though he worked hard to get stronger, progress was slow. The combination of Parkinson's symptoms and his spinal issues made day-to-day life more difficult. He spoke honestly in interviews about the frustration and sadness that came with not being able to move freely. Health problems also had a big impact on Ozzy's career. His planned no more tours. The farewell tour was frequently postponed, starting in 2018 and continuing through the early 2020s. Concerts were canceled in North America and Europe as Ozzy struggled with his condition. Though fans were disappointed, most understood that his health had to come first. In 2023, Ozzy officially canceled the rest of the tour, saying he was physically not able to handle live performances anymore. It was a hard decision, but a necessary one. Despite everything, Ozzy never gave up on music. While he wasn't able to tour, he continued to record albums and collaborate with other artists. In 2022, he released the album Patient No. 9, which received strong reviews and reminded everyone of his powerful musical legacy. He stayed creative behind the scenes, even if his body wouldn't let him perform the way he used to. Meanwhile, he searched for medical solutions that might help. Ozzy tried stem cell therapy and experimental treatments and visited specialized clinics in Switzerland. His family supported him through every step, and he remained under intensive medical care to manage his condition as best as possible. Ozzy has often said that he's not giving up and wants to keep going for as long as he can. But even after decades of music, fame, and health battles, Ozzy's story still has one more chapter left to explore. Sharon reveals the truth. In the final months of his life, Ozzy Osbourne gave fans one last gift, a powerful and emotional reunion with the band that started it all. In early 2025, Ozzy reunited with the original members of Black Sabbath for a farewell concert marking the end of an era. Despite ongoing health struggles, including Parkinson's disease and mobility issues, Ozzy was determined to take the stage one more time. The band performed in their hometown of Birmingham, the place where it all began back in the late 1960s. The event was emotional for everyone involved. Fans traveled from around the world to see the show. Many knew it might be their last chance to see the iconic frontman perform live. Ozzy sang with passion, despite his physical limitations, and his bandmates stood proudly beside him. The energy in the room was electric, and it became clear that this moment meant just as much to Ozzy as it did to the audience. The show was a celebration, not just of his music, but of his legacy and the decades of memories he helped create. Just a few weeks later, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne passed away peacefully at the age of 76. He was at home, surrounded by his wife Sharon, their children, and close family members. The news was shared through an official statement from Sharon, who wrote, "Ozzy left this world surrounded by love, and we are grateful for every moment we had with him." Her message was short, but it spoke volumes about their bond and the difficult road they had traveled together. The reaction to Ozzy's death was immediate and overwhelming. Around the world, fans, musicians, and celebrities paid tribute to the man who had changed rock music forever. Social media was flooded with messages of love and respect. News outlets ran special retrospectives, showing clips from his legendary career, Black Sabbath's early days, wild solo tours, and heartfelt family moments from the Osbournes' TV show. Many called him the godfather of heavy metal, and others simply thanked him for helping them through hard times with his music. While the public grieved, Ozzy's family chose to mourn privately. Sharon and the children stayed out of the spotlight in the days following his death. Close friends and former bandmates offered support, sharing memories, and speaking about Ozzy's impact, not just as a performer, but as a father, husband, and friend. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next one.